Welcome to IFO Classroom Season 4. In this season, we'll bring to you classes from the top university in Wales, the land of the dragons. In this season, we will have Cardiff University, University of South Wales, Cardiff Metropolitan University, Bangor University, Glendair University, Swansea University, University of Wales Trinity Saint David, and Aberystwyth University. In this season of IFO Classroom, we together will study so many different subjects, from design to marketing to even AI and so much more. If you are interested in studying in Wales or simply just want to experience the classroom abroad, tune in at 8 p.m. every Tuesday on IFO Facebook and YouTube. And right now, live from Wales.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người, xin chào tất cả khán giả của IFO Classroom. Welcome to IFO Classroom, live from Wales. Today we have a very special class for you. With us today we have a number of students, both high school students and also university students with us. So let's first meet the students. Can I have a few students introduce themselves to the class and introduce themselves to the audiences?
Hello, I'm Quỳnh Mai and I'm a 11th grade student in Hà Nội. My school name is Kim Liên High School. Xin chào mọi người, em là Quỳnh Mai. Hiện tại em đang là học sinh lớp 11 tại trường Trung học phổ thông Kim Liên.
Hello everyone. My name is Khanh. I am 19 years old. I was born and raised in Tiền province and I'm a student in Tôn Đức Thắng University. I feel very nice to meet you guys tonight. Chào mọi người, mình tên là Khanh. Năm nay mình 19 tuổi và mình đến từ Tiền Giang và mình cảm thấy rất là vui khi mà được gặp mọi người vào buổi tối ngày hôm nay.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I do see that we have students both in high school still and students in university. So if you're currently studying in university, could you raise your hand? 1, 2, Duy Khương 3, 4, Thùy Dương. So we have 4 university students. And the rest, I'm assuming you guys are from high school, right? Yes. Okay. Just with that in mind, we just want to show you how diverse our students is in this classroom. And with that, we also have a very special student, that is anh Hoàng Gia Anh Vũ. Anh Vũ, do you want to introduce yourself to the class and to the audience?
Yes, hi class, hi Dr. Pete. My name is Hoàng Gia Anh Vũ and I'm currently a freelance model and a personal trainer. So nice to meet you. Thank you, and I hope that we will have a amazing lesson today.
Yes, thank you anh Vũ for tuning in with us today. And just that is a little bit warm up about our students in our classroom. But let's go to our professor, our teacher today, Dr. Pete Spring. So Dr. Pete right here with us is from the University of Wales Trinity Saint David. He is a principal lecturer and an academic portfolio director of design and performing industries. Hi Dr. Pete, how are you doing over there?
Hello. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this. Just a quick overview of what I am. I'm a designer, I'm creative, but in my role at university I an academic director, so I'm sort of head of school, if you like, for the art school, one of the parts of the art school, and I oversee about 10 degree programs of various types, performing ones and design ones as well.
The audience, if you didn't know, University of Wales Trinity Saint David is one of the leading schools for arts and design. And with us today, Dr. Pete will bring a class on meta-design and creative thinking.
Do you remember this meme right here, where the 3 Spider-Men just go confusing when they met each other? Toby, Andrew, and Tom. Yes, that is a concept of metaverse. So imagine in each universe we have a different Spider-Man. This concept of metaverse is also inspired from the meta-design, the school of philosophy from meta-design, which is that if you look at one thing from different angles, you'll see a different thing. In your mind have some way to just imagine and create ideas. So that is the concept, the topic that we're going to explore today.
So students, anytime during the class, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and feel free to really show off your critical thinking and challenge the topic. As well as the audiences watching us live at home, please feel free to leave your comments or your questions down in the comment section, the chat. Right now in the class, we will just answer the students' questions first, but later on we will have a Q&A sessions with Dr. Pete and we will answer all of your questions. So feel free to just chat in your questions at any time. And without further ado, I'll let Dr. Pete take this class.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for inviting me to do this. I hope it is the sort of start of a journey, really, and help everybody just look at things in different ways. And I'm always learning. I'm older than all of you, I think, but you never stop learning, and it's how you keep an open mind. Okay, so like it says there, don't be scared. It sounds like a big, complicated word, a description of something that you may well not have come across before, but all it's saying is that meta design is beyond just design, just creating objects. It's about those connections between the thinking and the object, if you like, those intangible ideas and the connections that we can make between lots of things that we perhaps thought weren't connected. It is about everything, really. It's about you and me and us, all of these things that make the world what it is, okay? And it's about how we can use that thinking to create beneficial outcomes from the things we do, and questioning everything, whether we design something because we need it, or actually think about things and say, well, do we need it anyway? Should we not design it? Should we leave it because we don't need it? It's just creating unnecessary use of materials, for example. Okay, so but it's finely balanced. This thing's about, it's a very natural, systemic, systems-like approach. So everything is very finely balanced. So you have to ask the questions. And the one question that we always ask, and we should always ask if we're in any form of, you don't have to be creative, but we should anything we think about doing, we should ask ourselves, what if? It's an open question. What if we do this? What if we don't do this? What if we could do this? You know, so everything should start with that one question, what if? Okay, so as I said, it's about thinking in systems, not just things that stand alone. You know, my pen that I'm holding isn't just a pen, it's in my hand, in a room, the room is in a house, the house is in an environment, the environment is in another one. So everything has got these systems-like approaches. So everything somehow is connected. And what we do thinking about meta design is just think about the connections, these things between one and the other object. Okay, so is it the little image there on the left with the blue image and the green image joined together? What do we think that is in terms of a sort of a system? Has anybody got any ideas?
I guess the left is lung and the right is couchy.
That's right, exactly that. And that's not an accident they look like that. They're different things, but they do very similar work in the environment, if you like, in the world, in their evolution, the way they've evolved and adapted. Basically, they transfer what we might call information. In this case, it's nutrients, and therefore nature, the system, means that they look like that for a reason. Okay, so everything has a reason. In the system, the environment and the things in them aren't separate. That's the really key thing. And I won't read through that piece on the right. That's there for you to explore at your own leisure. But that is describing a general system theory approach by a German philosopher and thinker from the 1950s. And his name was Ludwig von Bertalanffy. And he came up with this a long time ago, really. And it acts as a way to think about what we do, because everything becomes interconnected. Okay, so does anybody know who it is? Without reading the caption underneath, do you know who that is? Are you familiar? You may not be familiar with this man, which isn't your fault. Don't be embarrassed if you're not. His name's Sir David Attenborough. He's 96 years old. He's been a broadcaster and a conservationist and an expert on all things to do with the world and the universe and everything, but mainly wildlife, for his whole career. His ideas and the way he presents very complex thoughts and ideas and interconnections has been very important to me. So, but what he says there is cherish what if, and you can say, well, what if we don't cherish the natural world because you're a part of it and you depend on it? We, as a human species, are just another animal in the natural world that have evolved and will carry on evolving. Okay, so we are part of everything else, not apart from that. And that's an important distinction, because we need, as creative people and people who design objects, cars, buildings, pens, everything you see around you has been designed, and it has an impact on the natural world. Okay, so bearing in mind what Sir David Attenborough says, we should be part, cherish the natural world, be part of it, understand our nature, if you like. Imagine that's just one of thousands and thousands of animals that suffered because something went wrong because of human action. And what if meta-design, because meta-design isn't just about designing objects, it's about that, as I said, that connection between things. It's how we explore things. So why do you think words like conservation or sustainability might be really, really bad? Because they appear to be really, really good. So, but why do you think as a meta designer, as a design philosopher, why do you think they might be very bad words?
Quỳnh Mai is raising her hand. Quỳnh Mai.
In my opinions, I think that these words such as conservation or sustainability, they start because we have ruined something or we couldn't protect it from the beginning. So finally we have to conserve it and preserve it again. So that's why it has some terrible meaning in it.
That's a good answer. It's a good answer. Those words, and lots of other words too, but those particularly that get used quite a lot. We shouldn't need words like conservation in the language, in any language, because what it's doing is describing things that we've done harmfully to other things. Okay? If we're conserving wild animals, like elephant in Africa, if we're conserving those as a conservation movement to stop them being killed, okay, so but it's like I say, it's about looking at things in a sort of unhappy way, if you like. You have to look at the dark side first, and then you can start to explore the optimism and bring those things out. So if I could have the next slide, and we'll get to something that's less depressing, but keep that in mind. So what we need to do, I think, is look at things like a child might, not in a childish way, not in a silly way, or a way that has no meaning. There we go. But look at it like a child might, with innocence. Okay, so just ask, what if we did that? What if we did that? What if we played together and joined these things together? Okay, so I've always thought like a child. I'm very serious about my job, but I like to have fun when I'm doing it. Who do you think is in that image? Just to be a bit playful.
Could that be you, Dr. Pete?
It is. That's little me when I'm about, however old I am there, about less than a year old. Okay, but I like that photo, not because it's me. I'm not vain. I'm not a vain person, but I like it because it makes me smile. And that, if I can still be doing that when I'm 150 years old, I'll be very happy indeed. I'll carry on smiling. But if you look at things with that innocence of a child, it starts to open up what we can do and think of things. Everything is a sort of creative process because we're joining things together in new ways. Okay. Does anybody know what they are? Apart from, well, yeah, what might they be? What do they look like? Can you see the faces in them?
Yeah. It's the same. It look like a smiley face.
Yeah, the two eyes and the mouth bit. I took these photographs. They look like cartoon faces, but actually all they are is a slice of kiwi fruit. So you're making these things up, but these hidden connections and this fun that you can have just by looking at things a little bit longer or a little bit differently, you know, so they sort of represent that idea. This may be quite a difficult one for you, actually. That image there, what do you think that is?
I guess that this is the grasses of the windows.
Yeah, this image here is ice on a window in the house. I took it last week, but you can see again those universal shapes. They're very plant-like. They're very organic looking things, and it's because they have the same sort of mechanics behind them, these natural systems. But that's just ice on a window in the house. Okay, but the beautiful thing about it is it's a natural object, but it was gone very fast. It melted away. So you have to look and notice these things. And like I do, I take photographs of lots of things so I don't lose that idea, because these ideas can then feed your creativity. Okay, very quickly then, that's the UK on the left, taken from space. And all of those things, of course, are lights that we've switched on using energy. What I'm asking, and the one on the right is the first, you may have seen this, I think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, it was an image of first proper image taken of a black hole. You know, these simple images of things actually aren't quite as we see them. And as I'm asking here, you know, in terms of an imagination, what if we just turn the lights out and think about things without actually seeing them and try and make these connections up? So like all of these images, they're creating hopefully more questions, and there are things that you can test and you can play with and form your own ideas. Okay, so again, just representative. Okay, so this is one of the programs that I look after at the university, in the art school. One of the programs is acting. We do a degree course in acting, and we do a master's in theatre direction. The woman standing up there is my colleague. She's the program manager, so she runs the program, and I'm the sort of manager of her over there. But what you can see is one of the stages that we have at the art school where they learn acting. But what they're doing, of course, is what we're doing in a different way, and they're joining ideas together. That's what actors do, of course, and storytellers. That's their expertise. We just do it in a different way. You know, you and I, for example, because I paint and I sculpt and I make things and I design things. We're doing exactly the same. We're acting, but in a different way. We act through the objects that we make and we design and we think about. Okay. Again, I put the caption in here because as a researcher and as an academic, you have to source all your material. But are you familiar with the designer Alexander McQueen, fashion designer? What that is really is just a dress. It's just a garment. That's all it is. Yeah, see what I mean? It's just, but the way that all of those layers, like you said, the huge parrot and the red and the colour and the pose of the model, all of these things brought together, all those layers of thinking brought together in one image to encapsulate the idea of what that is, that spirit of a beautiful piece of fashion design, a dress. Okay, so just a little bit of my work, really. This is a chair that I've designed. Weirdly, I'm fascinated by chairs, but this is based on the story. You may not be familiar, but it's Narcissus and Echo, and this is Narcissus, that was his name. He thought he was a beautiful, beautiful man, and he just stared at himself all the time and adored his own reflection. And this chair is using that story of self-obsession almost, and particularly designers and some artists do. They become more than the work they do, and it's in some respects it's about glorification, self-glorification, and I find that really annoying just as a person, and particularly when it's people that, like some famous designers, their work isn't actually that good, but everybody thinks it is, and everybody copies it, and there's self-reflection, that's self-absorption. So this is a chair based on that idea of a purity, and it's just some joints. It's the purest form of a chair that I could sort of devise, and it goes down to needle point feet, so it sits on the tiniest little points of its feet, and it has to sit on a mirror because it's reflecting on its own purity and beauty. That's the idea of it. But the story, the rationale, the reason for it is to symbolize that self-obsession that people might have. And actually, you can't sit on it. It's not actually, you can't, it's a useless chair in terms of actually being able to be used, because it hasn't got a seat. It's made of glass. Those rods are made of glass. So it's a sort of non-chair. It's a meta chair. It's beyond being a chair. It's just actually poking a bit of fun. It's pointing at those people that think they're better than they are. Okay, but this is another chair I'm doing with some students. It's always good to get students involved. So we join up and we level things off. So I'm not a lecturer. I'm just another designer helping other designers to think of things. But this is based on another Greek myth you may be familiar with. As you see on the right, there's somebody falling into the sea. That's Icarus. His name was Icarus. And the man flying was his father, and his name was Daedalus. So Daedalus was an inventor. He was a designer. He made things, and he made these wings for both of them. And he warned his son not to fly too close to the sun, because those feathers were just held together with wax. And if he flew too close to the sun, the wax would melt and he'd fall to the earth. But his son Icarus didn't pay attention, and he flew too high. He was having too much fun without thinking about the consequences, and he didn't listen, and he fell to his death tragically. And this chair on the left is telling that story. And again, it's having a little poke at people, designers, particularly in this instance, who create objects that aren't very good, but there's lots of flamboyance and lots of unnecessary things over it. Actually, this chair will, when it's finished, be covered with 3,000 feathers from an ostrich, not one ostrich, just ostriches. And again, you can't use it. And that's on purpose. There's no balance between the two. You've got an extreme. And if it's no good, you spend all of that time and money, but you can't use it. There's no point. Okay, so this is a sort of metaphor, a story behind helping students understand that you need to create beautiful things in your own way and your own understanding, but they have to work every time as well. You know, they can't have one without the other. Okay.
It's a very interesting concept, because you create something very beautiful, but then it's impractical, right? And so what is the use of it? If it's so beautiful, but it's just impractical, it's just good to look at? Is it the point of meta design?
The point of meta design is to ask the questions and to create that balance. So this is if you create something that's really that works every time, it's faultless in its terms of working, but nobody uses it, or nobody wants to actually purchase it in terms of a form of manufacture, a trade, a business, then there's no point, because nobody will buy it and nobody will use it, because it doesn't form that other side of the argument. It's not functioning on an aesthetic, on an emotional sense. And this is the opposite of that. It's got all of that theatre, but actually it's got no use. Okay, so you've got an image there of the design, one of the design studios. That's the product and furniture design studio in Swansea. They need what's called the Alex Design Exchange, the art part of the art school. So you can see busy students doing their thing there. And then the image on the right, this is a good example of student work. This is a master's student, in fact, on the right. He created these objects during the pandemic last year. He's won design awards with this. It was a really good example of that thinking between the objects. So you create a safety net, a form of emotional safety for the child by interacting with these objects. Okay, so that was quite a very nice idea. It's going into production. He's going to be a successful designer, I think.
We do have questions from...
Oh, sorry, I beg pardon. Sorry.
Yes. I want to ask you a question. I want to know, why did you decide to pursue your interest in design?
Well, I mean, when I started as a fine artist, I wanted to be a sculptor when I was 17, 18 years old. and I studied sculpture in Australia. Then I studied 3D design because I realised quite early on I wasn't going to be able to make a living as a sculptor because I really, really loved it, but I don't think I was very good at it. But I went into design because I was looking at ways to actually create a living by creating objects. You know, like it was a sort of commercial form of sculpture for me, which is sculpture. Because I'm always interested. I was always drawing as a child. I was always interested in these things, and it just built from there. I worked in children's TV when I left university because have you heard of Teletubbies? With children's
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I worked on some
son,
of that.
The baby son.
That's it. Yeah, I worked on some of that program when I was in some of my early career. So I went into that just because I was given an opportunity to work for this company. And again, those ideas of why we're spending all of this time creating programs and all of the merchandise and all the money that got generated, not for me, I didn't get any, but the company did. And it just built from there the reasons why we do things and the waste that was involved, and the things that we did and then used for perhaps 10 seconds while we were filming, and then it got thrown away. You know, so all of this thing started to build a bit of a fire in me, really. And then I went back to university and did my master's and my PhD in exactly that sort of idea of meta-design, why we do things and how we can create benefit rather than costs in these things. So trying to build and design ways to benefit. Okay, this image here is, again, it's a bit like the red dress. It's a form of performance and theatre because it's on a catwalk as well. But that's the nature of what that is. That the reason it's been, all those layers have been put together. And what this fashion show is actually selling really is that dress again. But what you do is focus on the butterfly headdress, which is a beautiful thing. So it's a beautifully simple dress, so that simplicity, but everything is there for a reason and there's no waste. And then you've got this opposite of the flamboyant nature of well, it's a headdress really rather than a hat, I think. So it's about looking at the same things differently. Is it design? Is it art? Does it matter? Is it important? Because again, we're just putting categories in these things. It's how we understand various things. I would say it's both, personally. It's design, it's art, it's a bit of sculpture, it's performance, you know, it's all of these things. It's creative thinking made real, okay? And again, you don't have to agree with me. These are just my ideas. We've got a few images now. I'll try and go through them. They're same sort of thing, really, same theme. Art design. Is it sculptural design? Is that even a thing? Does it have to be? You know, and it's about scale and interaction. If you never interact with that and never lie on it or sit on it, is it a chair? Is it a sofa? Is it just a chunk of wood in a lovely shape, or a chunk of wood in a not very lovely shape? You know, who knows? But these things, and it's quite old, 1985 it was done, but those ideas of creating a difference because it's inviting you to interact with it in a different way than you might ordinarily, okay? And again, the next slide is much the same. Again, a chair, not mine. Is that good design? What do we think?
I think it's a very, very creative design. Not sure if it's
Creative
comfortable to sit on, but it looks very interesting. I would like to try to sit on that, but I don't think it's going to be very comfy.
Exactly, the really good point, because it looks great and it was designed, you know, it's almost the real sketch, but it's made, you know, it's been refined and all that sort of thing. But actually, like you, I think that would be very uncomfortable. It'd be very difficult to sit on because you at the front, you can't tuck your legs underneath it. It would probably make all sorts of marks on your legs and your bottom. You know, it's all of these things are digging into your flesh. You know, you may end up putting a big soft cushion on it so it's comfortable. So actually, is it a good design? Is it instead a better form of sculpture that represents something else? You know, but it exists in the world because perhaps the use of it for me is to use an example of what perhaps we shouldn't have done. You know, perhaps it should have just remained a sketch. I don't know. You know, these things are open questions, but that's why I've included them, because everything we do should provoke more questions. You should always have another question. That's like research. It should always create more questions than it answers. What might that be? What's that showing us? What's that representing? Yeah, they're sweets. There's chocolate. Apparently, these are about £250 a box. So I don't know what that is in your currency. I don't know what the exchange rate is, but I know in sterling, it's an awful lot of money for what's that? 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 chocolates. £250. These things, do they need to be that expensive? You know, I mean, if they're mass produced, which they, in the sense of they might make perhaps 50 boxes per batch to sell to rich people, those things are made from molds, so they're not individually handmade in the sense of each is individually sculpted. So why do they cost so much? Really thoughtful objects, but actually, is it going too far? Is there a balance between one and the other? Okay, and again, these are open questions. I haven't got answers to any of this. I've just got ideas and, you know, that generation of things, of thoughts. Okay, so perhaps move on to the next one. This is a similar sort of thing, made out of one piece of wood, sitting on its tray, sitting on its saucer. I think it's a lovely thing, but I also think it's pretty useless. It's a bit like the glass chair, in the sense of you can't use it, and it's self-glorification. Should it exist in terms of a mass-produced object if it doesn't work very well? Because I've never used one, but by looking at it as a trained designer with lots, you know, I've got 30 years as a designer. You can buy these are commercially available. Again, they're expensive, and I wouldn't personally. I'll tell you, I think if you keep it, if it stays as an object that you really enjoy as an object, that's fine. But if it's a commercial design, which it is, and it's sold as a commercial design with a use, if I were to put my cup of coffee in that every day, or 3 or 4 I might have on a morning, particularly if I need to wake up, that probably won't last very long, because it'll stain, it'll crack. It's a pointless object. You might as well use a glass or a mug or a cup of tea. You know, a bit like the feather chair that I showed you. Is it all about that outside appearance rather than the actual use of it? Can it be used and still be beautiful? We're finding that balance. Okay, so that's what we're looking at there. These are spoons. Again, you can buy these if you choose to. Or you could even make your own if you wanted to. You know, you don't have to buy this stuff. You can take the ideas and make your own. But for me, as a meta designer, as a design philosopher, just as a thinker, a creative, I don't know what I am. I just think about stuff a lot and try and find those things, as you know. The interesting thing for me as a piece of design there is the joint between the ceramic part and the wooden part. Okay, can you see what the wooden part is? Do you know? Can you recognise what the wooden element is? Where does it come from?
Is that the branches from trees?
Yeah. They're just pieces of tree. They've been found objects. They were probably on the forest floor or on the beach. Where's the balance? What if they didn't work? Would you feel like you'd been betrayed by the designer? Because you've spent quite a lot of money on these, you've invested in them, and you want them to work every time and be lovely, you know, lovely things to use. I've never used them. I don't know. I got these as an image because as objects, they're okay. What I'm really interested in is the join between the two things, that point at which those two things join, and the contrast between them, and the context has changed. The way one speaks to the other one. You've got a sort of form of childlike purity about both elements, but they're the same, but they're very different as well. So in terms of that balance, I don't know what the answer is to this one personally. I suspect they probably wouldn't last particularly well in a day-to-day use, but perhaps they're not for day-to-day use. Perhaps they're for a very special dinner party, or you use them at a wedding and they don't use them again. So, it's about where you put that value with them, that user experience and that emotional connection, and the way you remember these things.
Yeah, and I'm just curious that if can we bring meta design into recycling or handcraft that we do at home? You think that is possible or not?
Yeah, because it's that sort of thing lends itself to the ideas of meta design, that the idea of linkages and making new connections really easily in many respects, because you're taking objects that have been discarded probably and looking at new ways of using those same materials but in a different way, and that's really interesting. So it's almost a natural home for this sort of thinking, because you're creating more benefit from something that's actually been discarded by somebody else. So those ideas, it's a natural place to look, really, certainly. In some respects, like that image that we've got there on the left, there's the incredible natural beauty and strength of bamboo connected to very nicely designed connections that connect to the ground. So you've got that connection between one material and the other, very unusual combination, but as a sort of designer, just a basic designer, if you like, looking at that object, I find it very pleasing, because it's every element again has been thought about and it works. But it's really, really, I think, subjectively, I think it's a really lovely thing as well. It's very industrial, but it has a purpose, and it's very much rooted in the country, in the nature of where it originated. So there's no clash between the two. I think it's just a lovely idea, really. I wish I'd thought of it, because I'd be very proud. And again, the one on the right is the same sort of thing. It's about that. Can anybody see what that might be? What might be that's just a little shot, a little element of part of a bigger object. Can you recognise what it might be?
Could that be the bottom of a chair, similar to the left
exactly.
picture?
Yeah, exactly. And you can see the simplicity of that, I think, and the way all of these joins and connections and the spaces between them as well. That's important, because they're all the same. And I think it's a beautiful piece of design. It's got a perfect balance between being useful, functional, strong, but it's got a certain simplicity and beauty and purity to it as well. But that is the underneath of an object. So you probably don't see it very often, but it's there, and it's there. That's for me very important, because even if you don't see it, it's there in your mind. And if you live with that and you invest some money in that object and you live with it and that beauty of it, if I say beauty in a wide sense, because it can, it's a very subjective thing, but the natural nature of that effortless bringing together of materials, you're living with that, and it's there with you in all the time probably, but you probably never look at it. Okay, I'm sitting on a chair designed by Charles Eames, who was a famous designer in the 50s and 60s. He and his wife were a design duo. I bought this chair years ago when I was an undergraduate, because we had an opportunity to get them really cheap, and it's an original one, and every little detail is there, and it works every time. I've had it for 30 years, and it's never let me down. So it's those sort of things that you can rely on, but I want it in my life, because every part of it is correct and as it should be. So these sort of things are what we should be doing all the time. And I understand it's not possible all the time, because we have demands from employers, we have demands from costs and manufacturing and all of these things. But if you can just do a little bit, it's better than not doing it at all. Okay, so here we are. Okay, so another program that I look after, if you like, I'm one of the is in my head of school role, is set and production design. So this is a little element there of some students just before Christmas. That image on the right is a little video, but hopefully you can see that at some point. But that is some virtual reality equipment that we use in lots of the programs, but particularly set and production design are using virtual reality equipment at the moment because it's an immersive thing. You can get into that system. I don't know whether anybody's had the fortune to use that and been lucky enough to get to use some of this equipment, but we're using quite a lot now and more in the university, in the creative part of the university, the art school, because it allows people to experience things differently and look at objects and actually almost, get inside them. You can draw an object in that software called Gravity Sketch in the virtual reality headset. And actually you can move into it and actually get inside an object. So you can draw a big tube, if you like, and actually you can enlarge it and actually get inside it. You can put your head inside it, and it gives you, giving particularly the young students, the creative students, a different way of looking at things. And they've started using this equipment and just being childlike with it and just playing with it and having some fun. And then they started to understand that they could use these new shapes and ways of interacting to create real objects, like they did on the left-hand side there in that set. They used ways of getting immersive experiences and then making them real. So you go from virtual reality to reality and back and forth. So it's a very useful tool for us. And automotive design and product design and set design, these programs that I'm working with, they're using this quite a lot now. There we are. So, really, really simply, that's about just representing. All these images represent ideas. So that's about context. Does anybody quickly know what that might be representing? This is an image I didn't do. This is from a scientific journal.
Yeah, I think it is representing the galaxy.
Yeah, that enormity, that enormous joining up, those connections between stars and galaxies and dark matter, all of these things that I don't understand, but I'd like to. But that is just a little image of hundreds and hundreds of galaxies, bearing in mind the one we're in, the Milky Way. But actually, if you look at it in the scale that we've got it there, it might be something that you can use to redesign an information system. So it might be that that's a map of the visible set of galaxies that we can see, or a snapshot, a small part of that. But actually it can be all sorts of things, because you just change the context, you change the way you look at it and the way you think about it. So it stops becoming star systems, but those galaxies could be individual people, because we are very complex individuals. There's lots and lots of things going on inside us. The human brain is said to be one of the most complex things in the known universe. So again, it's about how we think about these things. So again, what if this wasn't the end of the presentation, but actually just the beginning? And it's a new beginning for me, because I'm thinking about things already in different ways and how I might change things, how I might do other things later on this week. This is an image from one of the other programs that I oversee called Design Crafts. So it's very much a craft-based thing, as you might imagine, but how we create, or how that program, that degree program, creates objects objects for interaction, really. So it's a different type of design, and these are vases, and they're objects to have as forms of art, but they've been designed, they would be invested in. But actually, does that matter? I don't know. I think they're lovely, personally, and they're very unusual ways of manipulating glass. But again, it's just that idea of bringing some of those ideas in. And I think this student, if I remember rightly, she was interested in the way things can be formed and sort of pushed into a shape that then becomes this sort of natural but unnatural as well. So she was looking at lots of things, and then she went to glass and found that actually once it's warm and quite hot, it's actually a very fluid, organic thing. So she was trying to create some form through the nature of an unpredictable nature of heating something up. So, what if we're always asking that. What if your dreams did come true? What if you worked and you had the fortune? Some of it's hard work, some of it's practice, some of it is being in the right place at the right time, having ambition and thinking about things in a way that you want to. You can drive through other people's prejudice, if you like. And in a creative career, you'll be told no lots of times. Your clients will say, no, don't want that, do it this way. Sometimes you can push and manipulate what you're doing, because it's only about changing information. And this guy here, he was a student with us. He studied automotive design, another program that I oversee. He did his undergraduate degree with us a few years ago, and went on and he got a placement at McLaren, the sports car company in the UK. So he did it. He's a really good example, and it's an extreme one. Not all our students become head designers at McLaren or any other manufacturer or anything like that, but it does happen if you really push and you're open to change. He started off thinking about one thing and was asked to do another, and he didn't necessarily want to do this, particularly when he was a student. And the program director in charge gave him projects he didn't like, but he always found a way of making it his own. Okay, so this was the last slide, and actually it's saying, your dreams can come true. I love my job. It's fabulous. I've done quite a few things in my career, all creative, but I still enjoy it. I'm still finding value in it, and I love doing it, because if I didn't, I'd do something else. So there we are. That's sort of the first introduction to how you might look at things. And that's all it is.
Wow, that was really great. I think we did learn a lot, right? Any students in the class, do we have any questions, any thoughts that we want to share with the audiences or with Dr. Pete?
Yes, so Dr. Pete, I want to recommend for me to some apps to learn design, and now I just only do it on Photoshop.
One of the best ways to really start is just to draw. So start with drawing, explore that, be prepared to get things wrong. Adobe Illustrator is good. Again, I'm saying these things because I can't use them, but I know a lot of people that are very good at it because they went off in that direction. So Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, very good. There's I don't know whether it's free for you, but there's a company called Autodesk, and they do they're really, really good with CAD. And actually, I'm not sure, but in the UK particularly, it's free. So you can just download it. If you're a student, you can download this software, very powerful piece of software. It's Autodesk, and there's Alias and these other things. But unless you can get your ideas down on paper, for example, you won't be able to do it in CAD. They're the same, but they're different. Sketch first, then put it into CAD. We do get students all the time that go straight to CAD, straight to Photoshop or something like that, but they're kind of missing part of their journey. It's less creative sometimes because you're not doing that spontaneous thing. And with paper, if you draw on it, you can put it up. You can draw on another piece and put it over the top, and then you can change that. And I know you can do that, of course, in layers and things. But again, it's not spontaneous. So I would suggest the best app you can have is that, pen and paper, and then go from there. But no, any of these things are good, but don't just concentrate on the electronic, the digital version would be my view. Does that help?
Yeah.
Nhung, do you want to share something or have questions?
Yeah, of course. Yes, I really like your sharings about designer. Yeah, because my major is another major, so I'm not good at drawing. So, are there any problems for me when I learn to be a designer?
No, it's about that.
Oh.
It's about what's in your head. The way to drawing, sketching, doing quick things, just a sketch. Hang on. So that is just a bad image, is, you know, what you might call a really bad sketch. But what that's doing is representing some ideas. It's saying chair. It's saying something to sit on. It's asking what materials might it be used from. Is it exactly the same as that when it's real? How would it change? How can other people help? What you've done, you've got, if you keep that, you'll have it forever. You can put it in a book and keep it forever. So that's not, by any thought process, a good sketch, but what it is representing other things to do. You only get good at something if you practice. So don't worry about sketching. And anyway, creative people aren't the best judge of their own work. Okay? So if you say it's not a good sketch, you are not necessarily the best judge of that. You need others to tell you whether they think it's good or not. Okay? Criticise your own work. Allow others to look at it and give you some feedback on that too. Because you could do the best drawing in the world, but still think it wasn't very good because you're too involved with it. Okay? So don't worry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
So I do think that we do have a lot of questions, not only from the students in the class, but also from the audiences in the chat. So we will take a very, very quick break and we'll resume back with the Q&A right now. Thank you so much, and we'll be right back.
Hi! Welcome to IFO Classroom Season 4. In this season, we'll bring to you classes from the top university in Wales, the land of the dragons. In this season, we will have Cardiff University, University of South Wales, Cardiff Metropolitan University, Bangor University, Glendower University, Swansea University, University of Wales Trinity Saint David, and Aberystwyth University. In this season of IFO Classroom, we together will study so many different subjects, from design to marketing to even AI and so much more. If you are interested in studying in Wales or simply just want to experience the classroom abroad, tune in at 8 p.m. every Tuesday on IFO Facebook and YouTube. And right now, live from Wales.
Đại diện học sinh
Tự tin lên.
Mình đi
Không nhớ đúng không? Nếu như mà không ở đó lâu thì sẽ là rất
I guess today is not a good day for our crew.
hình như là mình lên hình lại rồi.
the sounding. Yeah, I will.
It's a bit rocky road that we're walking down to, but it's a start of something, and we're in this together. So I'm very, very excited and very
Yeah, yeah.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người một lần nữa và cảm ơn mọi người vẫn đã ở đây với chúng mình qua cái buổi livestream trực tiếp này. Ở đây cũng là buổi học đầu tiên ấy, cho nên là có một số lý do kỹ thuật, một số trục trặc nên mọi người hãy thông cảm cho chương trình của chúng mình nhé. Và đến với cái phần hỏi đáp này, ngay trước khi chúng ta bị cắt sóng thì đó đang là phần chia sẻ của bạn Quang Nguyên. Quang Nguyên đang chia sẻ thêm với chúng ta về suy nghĩ của bạn ấy về tiết học vừa rồi với thầy Peter Spring từ trường đại học Wales Trinity Saint David về môn học Metadesign. Quang Nguyên ơi, bạn vừa mới đang nói gì nhỉ?
Em vừa đang nói tới lúc mà thực sự một năm vừa qua thì em có ở nhà tự tìm hiểu thêm về ngành là graphic design, nhưng mà trong cái buổi học lần này thì thực sự là về cái khái niệm meta design thì đó là một khái niệm rất là mới, và em cũng mình cảm thấy rất là phấn khởi khi mà ngày hôm nay mình đã học thêm được một điều gì đó mới cho bản thân mình. Yeah.
Mình rất là mừng khi mà Nguyên học được một điều gì đó mới, và mình cá nhân mình và mình cá là tất cả các bạn khán giả đang theo chương trình này cũng đã học hỏi được rất là nhiều điều mới, tại vì cái khái niệm meta design Nó cũng không phải là quá quen thuộc đâu, nó rất là mới lạ và nó còn hơi trừu tượng nữa, hơi khó hiểu. Cho nên là các bạn khán giả đang xem chương trình của chúng ta, nếu mà có bất cứ câu hỏi gì thì đừng ngần ngại, hãy bình luận, hãy comment cái câu hỏi của bạn vào phần chat box và chúng ta sẽ từ từ đi trả lời từng bạn nhé. Trong lúc chờ đợi các câu hỏi từ các bạn thì mình lại tiếp tục hỏi như muội, cô gái cuối cùng còn trụ lại trong lớp này, the last one standing. Như muội, bạn cảm thấy như thế nào, bạn hiểu được gì về Metadesign qua cái tiết học vừa rồi? Muội ơi, mình mở mic lên để chia sẻ với các bạn nha.
Xin chào mọi người. Thì thật ra là lần đầu tiên mà mình tham gia chương trình liên quan đến design, và trước đây là khi mà mình học ở trường cấp 3 hay là đại học thì mình rất là ngại, giống như là mình rất là ít khi mà tham gia những chương trình liên quan đến việc vẽ hay là liên quan thiết kế, và mình nghĩ là mình không có giỏi về những cái lĩnh vực như vậy. Và sau này thì hiện tại bây giờ sau khi mà tham gia lớp học của thầy Dr. Peach thì mình cảm thấy là nó rất là thú vị, và chắc chắn là mình sẽ thử những cái điều thú vị đó trong tương lai. Dạ.
Và cũng giống như là các cái lớp học ở bên Wales, những cái lớp học kiểu mới chúng ta không đơn thuần chỉ là thầy giáo giảng và mình ngồi nghe mình chép bài, mà chúng ta sẽ có một cái lớp học nó có tương tác giữa đôi bên. Khi mà thầy giảng chúng ta tiếp thu kiến thức và chúng ta sẽ hỏi ngược lại. Đó sẽ là cái tinh thần mà chúng ta muốn hướng đến những bạn trẻ năng động ham học hỏi. Quân ơi, Quân Lê.
Yeah. Hi, Minh. Yeah.
Quân ơi, bạn có câu hỏi gì dành cho thầy Peter không?
So I have the questions for you. Before I have the questions for you, I really appreciate the classes because I know more about I know more about the arts and designs and use the creative thinking into my mind. And my questions is, do you believe arts is worthwhile endeavors for human beings to pursue?
Art, I believe, this is my opinion, like all of these things are, they're based on sort of objective, tried to be wide understanding, sort of a general knowledge, but you always have to draw out your own conclusions. So my view is that art is fundamental to the human condition. It's, I think, the collection, the accumulation of artifacts that we've been doing for thousands of years is key to the expansion of and the development, the evolution of the human species, the human mind. And when we talk about art, I include all of the arts as a plural. So it's music and it's performance and it's putting things together in invention and those interactions that we have with one and the other. I think without art in our history, we wouldn't be close to where we think we are now. And we have to look around ourselves and look out of the windows, and like we were talking about in the idea of meta design, look at the sort of normal, the mundane, the boring things, the things that people think are boring, and actually look at them in a different way. Because when we look outside, most things have been designed, and so that's a form of artistic endeavor, if you like. So there's all sorts of layers of art. But when we talk about things like fine art and masterpieces and these ideas of that's design as well, because the artists have actually composed those images and designed paint and ways of applying that pigment and that sort of application. In the prehistoric era, when people were painting on cave walls, some of them go back 40, 50,000 years. So people were there's something within the human condition, I think, that makes us want to express what we don't understand, if that makes sense. So it's a way of rationalizing ourselves and sort of making it real in some respects. So yeah, I think art is absolutely fundamental. You don't have to understand it, but I think you have to appreciate its reason for being, because it's part of us. We're part of it. I hope that. Sorry, I may not answer your question. Sorry.
Thank you for your sharing.
No, I do believe that there's like no short answer to that question, and that is very subjective to like the artist is in the eyes of the beholder, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Vừa rồi thì bạn Lê Quân vừa mới có một câu hỏi dành cho thầy Pete, đó là cái sự theo đuổi nghệ thuật nó có ý nghĩa như thế nào, và thầy Pete đã cho chúng ta một câu trả lời rất là khá là hàn lâm. Mình sẽ tóm tắt rất là nhanh thôi. Đó là theo đuổi nghệ thuật nó hiện hữu trong tất cả những cái yếu tố hàng ngày cuộc sống của chúng ta. Từ hàng nghìn năm trước, khi mà thời kỳ đồ đá chúng ta từng vẽ từng khắc lên đá, đó là một cái cách để mà chúng ta nói chuyện với nhau, giao tiếp với nhau và lưu lại những cái thông tin kiến thức cho đời sau này. Đó cũng là nghệ thuật giúp cho chúng ta giúp cho cuộc sống nó bớt nhàm chán hơn, là nó gần như là cái sự theo đuổi nghệ thuật, nó gần như là nằm trong bản năng của mỗi con người ấy. Giúp cho chúng ta có thể nhìn mọi thứ theo một cái hướng đi khác hơn, giống như là mở rộng thế giới quan của mình vậy. Và không cứ là nghệ thuật là một cái thứ mình có thể hiểu được, có thể định nghĩa được, nhưng nó là một cái phần không thể thiếu được trong cuộc sống của mỗi người. Và ngay tiếp theo đây chúng ta có một câu hỏi từ các bạn khán giả gửi về inbox của chương trình, đó là trong lớp thầy Pete đã nhắc đến việc hãy nhìn nhận mọi thứ theo ánh mắt của một đứa trẻ, để có thể để giống như là một người thiết kế, một designer có thể nhìn các thứ theo một cái góc nhìn nó ngây ngô và nó có nhiều sự sáng tạo hơn. Thì làm sao để mà giữ được cái sự ngây ngô, giữ được cái sự tươi trẻ trong việc design như thế? Dr. Pete, there's a question in our inbox that ask, you mentioned that we need to look at things from a child's point of view, but it's not in a childish way. So, and a designer is under a lot of pressure, and this can affect a designer perspective a lot. So how do we maintain the child's innocence and its way of looking at things?
That's a good question. It's very difficult in a commercial environment when we have pressures from our managers and our bosses, the people and the clients, and they're making demands of our time, because that's what we do as designers and creative people. It's very difficult to do that, because it's a very serious business. But it's all in everything there has to be found an element of fun, and I think that's what I mean when I talk about looking at things like a child. It's not easy. Sometimes you have to not make a joke of things, but see things for what they are. I think sometimes a chair is just a chair, it's just something we sit on. But people get, as I said in that presentation, some people get very serious and too involved in their own sort of world of what they think they are portraying through their objects. And sometimes, my pen is just a pen. It's not, it's just a child would say that's just a pen. And that sort of idea of taking the seriousness out of things. But I agree, it's very difficult when you've got demands made of you and people want your time and they're paying you to do it.
It's almost sort of like, when you mentioned the pen, it's sort of like this pen right here that we have. It's quite cute. It's not like a regular design of a pen. It has a watermelon up here, and it functions well, but it's just cute to hold. And that is where we want to strike the balance, right, between creativity and applicability, right?
It is, exactly. And in that respect, we've got different pens, but they are just pens. And I look after mine because I like it and it works every time. And it's just a pen. But
there's nothing fancy about it.
There's nothing fancy about it. And it's that balance, as you say, between there's style and design, and they're two different things. And I think a lot of well, not a lot, but designers tend to be can be very arrogant about themselves and what they produce, and they think they become more important than their objects, and I think they become stylists rather than designers, because if your product doesn't work but it looks fantastic, that's not design, that's styling, and it becomes different and detached. There is a company, I'm not sure whether you've heard of, there's a French designer called Philippe Starck, and he's very famous in the 1980s and 1990s, but he became so famous, he became this sort of idea of himself. He became his own design, really. And there are objects that he's designed which are very famous, iconic designs, and there's a company in Italy called Alessi, and they sell some of his products, and they give a written guarantee that object won't work. And that for me is just a terrible thing, because it gives art and design a bad name. It just becomes a stylistic, self-indulgent process, and that shouldn't be allowed in many respects. I mean, it is, because it's commercial and it's about money, but nevertheless, if you design something and you guarantee that doesn't work but it looks fabulous, what's the point? So it's that balance, as you say.
Và thầy Peter vừa mới chia sẻ với chúng ta là khi mà chúng ta trở thành một nhà thiết kế chuyên nghiệp, và khi mà chúng ta bắt đầu có những deadline, có công việc, khi mà sếp mình bắt đầu dưới deadline thì chúng ta sẽ nằm ở dưới rất là nhiều áp lực, và để mà có thể vẫn giữ được cái sự sáng tạo và những cái góc nhìn nó thật là tươi trẻ và tươi mới, như là trẻ con nhìn vào những cái bút dễ thương của tay như thế này, thì đó là một điều rất là khó, và chúng ta phải luyện tập và cố gắng giữ cái sự cân bằng giữa sự sáng tạo và tính ứng dụng của cái sản phẩm mà mình đang thiết kế. Và Metadesign, meta là một cái cụm từ mà gần đây chúng ta nghe rất là nhiều, kiểu Metaverse, thì không biết là các bạn khán giả có những câu hỏi gì về chủ đề này không nhỉ? Các bạn khán giả nếu mà có câu hỏi trực tiếp rồi thì hãy comment ngay câu hỏi của mình dưới đây để thầy giải đáp nha. And Dr. Pete, meta has been a keyword that we keep hearing these days, especially with like the meta universe, with Marvel, and then with Facebook recently renamed itself as Meta. So what exactly is meta, and how is it so important, and why should we understand it, or can we understand it?
Yeah, it's becoming a much more common word in everybody's vocabulary. For me, it means, the sort of literal definition is, it means beyond something. So metaphysics is beyond physics. It's the same, but it's different. It's that space between, almost. So the metaverse, which has become incredibly, as it says in the chat, viral, it quite literally, like we saw in the last couple of years, that nature of the spread right across very, very fast, the rapid dispersal of that idea is powerful in itself. It's become its own sort of fashion, if you like. People like it. It's become popular, which is good in some respects. But the metaverse is, for me, beyond the universe. But I think that needs to be brought back down a little bit to a sort of more humanistic understanding, because actually what it's trying to do is go beyond our normal experiences, so we can actually perhaps do something like this lovely experience and actually do it in a virtual environment. I think that's sort of beyond what we normally do. So it's a new way of looking at things. But perhaps the universe, we could redefine that and bring it down to individual people and call it the universe. So it's YOU universe instead of universe. So it's about you, your universe. Perhaps that's the way. So we all have our own universe, or you all have your own universe. I have a me-verse, perhaps, because you're looking at me. I don't know. But if we're using things like that, the virtual reality kit, which we can then wear and actually walk around, and I think we need that. Again, it's about the balance of what is real and the balance between immersing yourself in other forms of you, other forms of ourselves. So I think that's where that creative thinking needs to be brought forward, so we can actually make our own safe understanding of it, because it's quite a scary, quite a frightening thing when you, not when you use that stuff, that equipment, but actually the difference in our realities is going to change, and how we then interpret those. So again, perhaps I haven't answered your question. I tend to do that, sorry.
No. I do believe that is a very complex concept. So there's no easy answer to it.
No, unfortunately not.
Thầy Peter vừa mới chia sẻ với chúng ta là meta là một cái khái niệm rất là rộng và chúng ta không thể định nghĩa nó được. Nó giống như là meta là một cái sự rộng hơn. Meta universe là một cái thế giới, một cái vũ trụ nó bao la, nó rộng lớn, và cái khái niệm này nó thực sự là rất là khó tả thành lời, và giúp cho chúng ta có thể nghĩ và sáng tạo theo nhiều cách khác nhau để mà có thể tưởng tượng ra, giống như là khi mà chúng ta dùng cái máy VR thực tế ảo để chúng ta có thể tưởng tượng được ra những cái thực tế ảo khác, thì đó chính là cái meta ở đây. Và mình vừa mới nhận được một câu hỏi từ bạn Như Huyền. Bạn Như Huyền hỏi thầy Peter là tại sao thầy lại chọn Metadesign in Arts. We got a question from Như Huyền. She asked you that why did you choose Metadesign in Arts in general, Dr. Pete?
I didn't specifically choose it. I think it chose me in some ways, because my career started in fine art. I wanted to be a sculptor. I left school when I was 16. Didn't go in to do the higher piece at school. I left and became, I trained as a mechanic, a car mechanic, and just because it was a job. And it was in 1984. So I'll give away my age a little bit. And I needed a job, and I wasn't allowed, the school system didn't allow me to go and do the higher grades at school because I wasn't good at things like mathematics, and they wouldn't let me go further, so I left school. But then my family, we emigrated to Australia, and I studied fine art in Adelaide in Australia, and I wanted to be a sculptor, but I quite quickly realized I wasn't going to be able to really make a living at that and earn money, so I chose design as a form of commercial sculpture, so I could bring the ideas of nature and the natural world and science and all of these things that I was interested in but wasn't allowed to actually study in the school system at the time, and made my own path, if you like. I wasn't going to be told I couldn't do things, so I brought these things I did together. And eventually, when I did my master's, which was about actually late, I went back to university about 15 years after I did my undergrad. And then these ideas of meta design started to make sense because I was drawing all of these things together. And then eventually, after my master's, I did my PhD straight after that. And that I used my master's degree as a sort of foundation to build ideas to then use in real research, if you like, to actually do my PhD. So it kind of evolved naturally. And now when I look back, I don't think I could have done anything else, because all of the things I'm interested in came to make sense. But it took a long time, it took 30 years. So.
Yes. Like you say, you didn't choose it, maybe the career chose you. In Vietnamese, yeah. We do have a similar saying. Thầy Peter vừa mới chia sẻ là không phải là thầy chọn cái nghề đâu, mà là đôi khi không phải là người chọn nghề, mà là nghề chọn người. Thầy Peter cũng như thế. Hồi đầu thì thầy Peter học để mà muốn trở thành một nghệ sĩ điêu khắc cơ, nhưng mà sau đấy thì thầy nhận ra là thầy sẽ không thể nào trở thành một nhà điêu khắc cực kỳ tài ba được. Và sau khi thầy học đại học, thầy bắt đầu được tiếp xúc với khái niệm meta từ hệ thạc sĩ, và thầy bắt đầu cảm giác là cái này thật là hay, thật là thú vị. Thế là thầy cứ tự nhiên theo vòng tự nhiên như thế, thầy cuốn vào cái concept, cái khái niệm của meta design, và đó là lý do làm sao mà thầy trở thành gọi là một chuyên gia về meta design. Nhưng mà thầy nói là cái con đường cũng không phải dễ dàng, đã phải mất 30 năm để có thể đứng ở đây và đứng lớp với mọi người như ngày hôm nay. Câu hỏi tiếp theo mình vừa mới nhận được là từ bạn Linh Nguyễn. Bạn Linh Nguyễn bày tỏ sự yêu thích với trường Wales Trinity Saint David. Và rất may là trong phần hỏi đáp của chúng ta ngày hôm nay có cả cô Yến nữa. Cô Yến sẽ là người đại diện cho trường Wales Trinity Saint David để mà có thể trả lời thêm những câu hỏi của các bạn học sinh, sinh viên nếu các bạn có hứng thú về trường học và đi du học ở Wales. Câu hỏi của bạn là What are the career opportunities for design graduates? This question, sorry, Dr. Pete, this question is dedicated to Miss Yến right here.
Okay. Dr. Pete, if you don't mind, can I just answer her in Vietnamese? And I'll briefly translate into English to you later. Câu hỏi rất là hay, cảm ơn em. Thực chất ra là như các em đã biết, trường UWTSD là về Art and Design là một trong những cái ngành mạnh nhất của trường chị, của trường cô, và có gọi là như ở Việt Nam mình nghĩ đó là những cái top những cái ngành, những cái ranking của trường rất là cao. Thường thì trường có những cái hoạt động, có nghĩa là học sinh đi học và được thực tập luôn ở trường, có những cái platform cho các em thực tập, và trường có những cái cơ hội đầu ra là liên kết với các công ty lớn, ví dụ như là em biết hãng quần áo H&M này, rồi là có những cái cơ hội fashion design event cho các em liên hệ và tập tụ và mình có thể luyện tập. Thì khi mình học mình có cái bằng tốt được quốc tế công nhận và được thực tập những cái kinh nghiệm thực tế trong quá trình mình học, mình có những cái khả năng nhìn nhận. Và ở đây cái khóa học của trường là sẽ cho các em một cái kỹ năng, đó là practical. Đấy, thường thì ở Việt Nam các em học kiến trúc hoặc là kỹ sư hay thiết kế ra thì các em hơi mông lung, chỉ là kiến thức, nhưng mà trường sẽ cho các em cái kỹ năng đó, và mình được thực tập với các nhãn hàng, các công ty đó, thì đấy sẽ là một cái cơ hội rất là tốt cho các em có thể tìm việc internship hoặc những công việc sau này. Đặc biệt hơn là ở UK, khi các em sang học thời điểm hiện tại rất là tốt, thu hút học sinh quốc tế, đó là sau khi các em học xong bậc đại học và thạc sĩ, các em có thể ở lại 2 năm để mình có thể tìm việc đó. Thì cô nghĩ rằng là đây sẽ là cái cơ hội làm việc rất là nhiều. Hiện tại bây giờ thì mình trong quá trình mình học mình có thể tìm hiểu và mình tìm hiểu thêm cái cơ hội cho mình, nhưng mà ở trường có một cái đội ngũ tiếp theo nữa, không những là về cái lĩnh vực các em học mà bản thân cô ở đây hay là bên trường sẽ đưa cho các em những cái lời khuyên cho quá trình các em học. Khi mình bắt đầu khóa học, mình đã muốn ý tưởng thế này thì mình sẽ có thể bàn bạc thêm, đi sâu thêm và định hướng các em có những cơ hội tốt nhất đó. Cũng như là bản thân cô sang đây học, mình học từ thạc sĩ lên tiến sĩ, mình luôn luôn có những cái kế hoạch mình muốn trở thành như thế nào, thì cũng là một cái cơ hội là cô muốn là giúp tất cả các bạn học sinh Việt Nam có thể chạm đến ước mơ du học. Để trong quá trình học thạc sĩ và tiến sĩ bây giờ thì là cô đã làm việc cho trường, được trường offer cái công việc để mình làm, để mình giúp học sinh nhiều hơn sang đây đó. Thì cơ hội việc làm rất là nhiều, nhưng mà mình sẽ phải có cái kế hoạch rõ ràng và mình phải học thật lực đó. Thì hy vọng là câu trả lời của cô là đáp ứng cái câu hỏi của bạn học sinh vừa rồi.
Dạ vâng. Em nghĩ là ngoài những cái cơ hội thực tập và những cái cơ hội để mà làm việc sau này thì một cái phần rất là quan trọng trong đời sống trong cái thời gian đi học đại học đó chính là cái trải nghiệm của đời sống sinh viên. Thì thường là mình phải vui thì mình mới học được, đúng không? Chứ nếu mà mình không hứng thú với lớp học và mình cảm thấy buồn quá hoặc mình nhớ nhà quá thì cũng không thể nào mà tập trung học tốt được. Vậy thì cô có thể chia sẻ thêm một chút về đời sống sinh viên của các bạn của trường mình như thế nào không ạ?
Ok, có một cái rất là hay, đó là như vài năm trước khi mà các bạn học sinh như bản thân cô sang đây hơn 10 năm trước thì sẽ là bỡ ngỡ, mình nhớ nhà, đúng không? Thời điểm đó thì học sinh đi học du học nước ngoài cũng còn hạn chế, nhưng hiện tại bây giờ là mình có cái cộng đồng người Việt và cộng đồng học sinh châu Á. Trường ví dụ ở Swansea các em sẽ được sống một cuộc sống một trong những cái thành phố đẹp nhất ở UK, rồi là có các bạn cộng đồng người Việt, rồi là trong trường là mình có những hội nhóm, và trường đặc biệt là luôn luôn tổ chức cho học sinh những cái tour đi thăm các nơi, ví dụ như là du lịch. Khi mà các em có time break, các em trường sẽ tổ chức cho em các cái bus tour cho các em đi những cái nơi các em thích, gặp bạn bè, rồi mình có những cái buổi offline đó. Thế nên là tất cả các hoạt động của trường phần lớn sang đây khi các em đã tập trung vào học và làm quen cuộc sống rất là nhanh, tiếp thêm nữa đó là trường có một bộ phận gọi là International Student Service. Người ta sẽ ở đó, các cô sẽ ở đó khi mà mình sang đây mình cần một cái vấn đề gì thì mọi người sẽ hướng dẫn các em. Thì bản thân cô thấy là sang đây mình sẽ vui lắm, không có bị bỡ ngỡ như ngày trước đâu. Mình sao mà mình đến trường là mình vui này, mình học mình vui để mình được nói chuyện với các bạn, để mình được phát triển cái khả năng tiếng Anh của mình, đúng không? Sau đó mình về mình được thực tập những cái công việc học Art Design, các em luôn luôn là sáng tạo, làm những cái công việc, cái project của mình đã rất là vui rồi. Tiếp theo đó là mình có thể được dự các cái sự kiện về công việc, event của trường. Ngoài thêm khi các em có term break thì các em có thể đi du lịch. Anh thì lại là từ Anh các em đi du lịch các nước châu Âu rất là gần, việc xin visa thì cũng rất là dễ. Thì đó là một cái thời gian khám phá rất là nhanh. Nếu các bạn mà muốn sang đây 1 năm 2 năm thì cái khóa học đó kết cũng khá là nhanh. Nếu như mình muốn ở lại để mình đi làm thì mình cũng sẽ có cái thời gian trải nghiệm về văn hóa, về con người, về ngôn ngữ, đấy, về cả về thời tiết nữa. Wales thì tất cả mọi thứ rất là yên bình và đẹp. Mình cảm giác như là mình đang sống ở một thành phố khá là sôi động, nhưng mà thời tiết như là Sapa nhà mình đấy, rất là thích. Thì cô nghĩ rằng là sẽ không buồn đâu, không có việc gì buồn. Và đặc biệt hơn nữa là bây giờ là technology này, rồi là tất cả mọi thứ internet quá là sẵn sàng cho mình rồi, thì cô sẽ đảm bảo rằng là học sinh của mình sang đây học sẽ đỡ nhớ nhà hơn và không bị bỡ ngỡ đâu. Và có bất cứ cần một sự trợ giúp gì thì cứ liên hệ với cô, thầy và trường luôn luôn ở đây hỗ trợ các em từ đầu đến cuối, không phải lo cái gì cả.
Vâng, em rất là cảm ơn cô Yến. Em chắc chắn là các bạn khán giả tại nhà cũng như là các bạn học sinh ở đây, chúng ta có nhìn thấy trên gương mặt các bạn là kiểu rất là muốn được đi du học rồi. Có khi là năm sau mình lại được phỏng vấn các bạn học sinh có mặt ở đây với tư cách là sinh viên của trường thì sao?
Rồi, chính xác luôn.
Vâng. Và câu hỏi tiếp theo từ bạn Alex Bùi hỏi tại fanpage của VN Express, đó dành cho thầy Pete, đó là what majors does Metadesign include and how to start to learn?
Metadesign can be, this is another one of my answers that doesn't answer the question. This metadesign isn't one specific thing, so you can be a fine artist and look at things in the same way. You can be a classics major and literature major, but you're drawing those different elements together to make your own sort of creative thinking and your own parts. But in specific terms to perhaps an undergraduate degree, let's say, you could, in anything with sort of design in the title, really, like product design, furniture design, automotive and transport design, like one of the last slides that I showed, design crafts, where it's much more of a craft-based sort of merging of art and craft and design, because you're bringing materials together in new ways with all of those things. Some are much more commercial, like product design and automotive design, but it's about the thinking before you actually design something. If you like, that's why sketching and drawing is important, because that's the important part of meta design almost, because you're just drawing anything and reading anything and bringing those ideas on and out of your brain and onto the paper. So it can apply to lots of things. It's just about how you manipulate that sort of interaction, if you like. And a lot of people do it, but they don't know they're doing it. So it's not really often spoken about in those specific terms. It's about you're doing it anyway. But actually, if we do it in more explicit terms and make real point and subject of doing that, then more people perhaps would understand the idea, and more people would perhaps do things in more meaningful ways. So the short answer is anything.
Your question, your answer is very meta. May I say it? Vừa rồi thì thầy vừa mới chia sẻ với chúng ta là Metadesign. Câu hỏi của bạn Alex Bùi từ fanpage của VN Express, đó là Metadesign bao gồm những ngành gì và như thế nào để bắt đầu học. Thì thầy trả lời là Metadesign nó rất là meta. một câu trả lời rất là broad, một câu trả lời rất là rộng, rất là trừu tượng ấy. Tại vì meta design nó nằm ở trong tất cả mọi khía cạnh của cuộc sống, chỉ là cần là bạn có cái sự sáng tạo và bạn tiếp tục vẽ ra, viết ra và kiểu như là express cái sự sáng tạo của bạn, thì đó là bạn đang học meta design rồi. Nó có thể là bạn đang thiết kế thời trang, thiết kế nội thất, bạn có thể là kiến trúc sư, bạn có thể chỉ đơn giản là đang thiết kế một sản phẩm nào đấy, hoặc là đang lên kế hoạch cho một cái campaign marketing, đó cũng đều có thể là meta design. Cho nên là meta design mình không thể dịch cả tiếng Việt được, nhưng nó rất là meta. And Quang Nguyên ơi, bạn có câu hỏi gì dành cho thầy không? Sau khi mà nghe rất là nhiều câu hỏi từ các bạn khán giả cũng như là từ những chia sẻ từ thầy Pete của Yến.
Yeah, thank you for sharing about from Dr. P and cô Yến. So you know, so I really care about this major, and for people if they don't have condition to learn this major from your universe, so this method can learn by themselves.
Yeah, it's sorry.
So this method can learn by themselves.
Yeah, it's for example, yeah, you may study product design or furniture design, but it's what, and particularly as international students, if you'll come to study, you'd have even more to bring to that thinking, because you've got a different way, you've got your cultural history, you've got different, you know, the language is very important, because there's a difference in the way that some of the words might be interpreted one way and another. So there's always things to take from that, and it becomes a richer experience. And I think that's the nature of well, good interactions, good design, good outcomes. It's about that richness. You bring in all. They say that if you can, with research, you could read 100 books, but the last one is the important one. But you have to read the 100 books before you get to the end. But to the last one, you can't just choose the book and it'll be important. You have to read a lot, or you have to bring these ideas together in order to get that outcome. So that idea of meta is that beyond what you're actually doing. So it's that extra experience that you bring. My brother is an illustrator. He illustrates books, children's books, and some sort of more sort of serious books about wildlife things. So it's a very photorealistic animals and things. And when he was doing his illustration, he does cartoons really quickly, and they're very funny, I think. But he does them like really quickly, and people say, well, how can you get paid for that? It only took you 30 seconds to draw that. He said, well, yeah, but it was 25 years of practice to actually get to that point where you can do it. You know, so that's that idea of meta. You know, so it can be an explicit thing where you can do meta design research, which is a form of sort of design philosophy, if you like, and ways of articulating. But actually, in practical terms, when you're working for a client, it's all these things that you bring with you that will make you employable. You know, again, you do it without other people knowing almost. It's almost a secret.
Yes. Thank you.
Bạn Quang Nguyên vừa mới hỏi thầy Peter đó là có thể tự học meta design được không, đúng không Quang Nguyên nhỉ? Và thầy trả lời là tất nhiên rồi, giống như là tất cả các môn học khác thì mình đều có thể tự học được. Và cái sự tự học của nó đòi hỏi rất là nhiều sự kiên trì và sự quyết tâm và sự tò mò học hỏi. Một trong những điều quan trọng nhất trong việc học, không chỉ meta design nói riêng mà tất cả các môn học nói chung, chúng ta cần phải có cái sự tò mò, tìm kiếm. Giống như thầy vừa mới kể ví dụ là em trai của thầy đang là một họa sĩ vẽ tranh cho truyện tranh của các em bé, và hiện tại thì công việc của anh ấy chỉ đơn thuần là vẽ ký họa rất nhanh, chỉ trong khoảng 30 giây có thể vẽ xong một cái bức tranh để trong một cuốn sách. Thì mọi người hỏi tại sao lại có thể vẽ trong vòng 30 giây nhanh như thế mà vẫn được trả tiền nhỉ? Thì anh ấy trả lời đó là sau 25 năm luyện tập thì họ mới đến được cái trình độ đấy. Cũng giống như là tất cả các môn học người ta gọi là văn ôn võ luyện ấy, thì mình phải thực sự là nhuần nhuyễn những cái kỹ năng đấy, mình phải thực sự hiểu những kiến thức đấy thì mình mới có thể thành công được trong cái lĩnh vực cũng như là cái môn học ngành học của mình đang muốn theo đuổi. Đăng Khương ơi, không biết là em có suy nghĩ như thế nào về Metadesign, về những cái điều mà thầy Pete vừa chia sẻ?
Yes, like everything that Dr. Pete has shared with us, I can enhance a little bit about my creativity for designing, and thanks to when I joined in your class, I feel very emotional because I was born in a rural area and I had no chance to practice English with foreigners. So studying abroad studying abroad seemed to be very hard for me. Yeah. So, however, now I'm sitting in your class and listen to the presentation about Metadesign, and I feel very happy for that. I have one question quite related to Wang Nguyen. Yeah. How can we make Metadesign more practical to study? Yeah.
That's a good question. I think the short answer to that, you'll be happy to hear, I can give you a short answer to that, is that we have to tell everyone what we're doing and how we're doing it, and ask people, or even make people do things in that sort of new way, or the way it's not new to us necessarily, but it's new to lots of people. And I don't mean force them to do it, but invite them in, make them do it because it's interesting. And in academic terms, what we need to do is write a meta-design degree program, or an undergraduate, a like a foundation course before you do a degree, but actually make it a specific thing so people can actually come and study meta design, and then we can bring all these things together. And I'd be very enthusiastic about doing that, and it's given me an idea. I'll talk to my manager later on. I'll send him an email and say, why don't we do this? Because it's very specific, but it actually makes, I would imagine, and I hope, and I think it makes people, students, contributors more employable, because you can do more things with the sort of set of tools that you build in your head. So the short answer is telling everybody, so just tell them. Say, look at that, and look at that, and look at that, and what if we did this, and what if we did that? And be a child, but don't be childish.
Yes, be a child, but don't be childish. That is a very, very wise advice, and it is also very tough to follow as well.
It is, yeah.
Vừa rồi thì bạn Đăng Khương mới chia sẻ là khác với mình hiện tại là đang ở Hà Nội, thì Đăng Khương là đến từ Tiền Giang, và cái cơ hội để mà được tiếp xúc nói chuyện với người nước ngoài để học hỏi về tiếng Anh cũng như là các khái niệm mới này nó không quá thường xuyên, cho nên bạn Đăng Khương rất là trân trọng cái lớp học này, và chúng mình, bản thân mình cũng như là ban tổ chức, khi mà được nghe điều này thì rất là vui. Hy vọng là qua những lớp học như thế này của chúng mình, IFO Classroom mùa 4 Live from Wales, thì chúng mình có thể mang đến cho các bạn những cơ hội không chỉ là tiếp xúc với tiếng Anh nhiều hơn, tập luyện hiểu tiếng Anh nhiều hơn, mà còn có thể tìm hiểu những cái chủ đề nó rất là thú vị, và tương tác với những thầy giáo, giảng viên cũng như là các bạn học sinh, sinh viên từ khắp cả nước cũng như là ở nước ngoài nữa. Và đó, thầy Peter đã dành cho các bạn học sinh, sinh viên của chúng ta một lời khuyên, đó là để mà được học tốt không chỉ Metadesign mà tất cả các môn, thì hãy năng nổ hỏi lên, không có gì phải sợ cả. Hỏi một câu cùng lắm thì người ta không biết câu trả lời thôi, chứ có gì đâu, một câu hỏi không mất gì cả. Nhưng mà cái việc mình hỏi như thế tức là mình tò mò, và đó sẽ là bước đầu tiên, là bước đệm đầu tiên để chúng ta có thể khơi gợi ra những cuộc nói chuyện, và từ những cuộc nói chuyện đấy biết đâu chúng ta tìm ra những ý tưởng mới, và từ đó thì mình không thể biết được là sẽ có những cái phải nói như là cái possibility nào xảy ra. Và đó, Do thời lượng của chương trình có hạn nên chúng mình không thể giải đáp được hết tất cả các câu hỏi của các bạn. Chúng mình biết là có rất là nhiều câu hỏi còn đang chờ ở trên fanpage cũng như là trong inbox của chúng mình. Và đó cũng có nghĩa là mọi người cũng bắt đầu động não và tò mò hơn. Thì mình rất là mừng và rất là cảm ơn 4 bạn học sinh ở đây cũng như thầy Pete Spring và cô Yến Tô đã có mặt ở đây trong chương trình. Và cũng cảm ơn tất cả các bạn khán giả đã cùng có mặt ở đây để tham gia lớp học của mình. Chúng mình, Dr. Pete, thank you so much for being here and spending your time with us and sharing more about meta design as well as your insight and very wise advice. And thank you so much, Ms. In, for telling us more about the student life over there in Wales University of Wales Trinity Saint David. We really appreciate your time, and we do hope to see you one day soon in Vietnam or maybe in the metaverse. Who knows where we can meet.
Thank you, it's a real pleasure.
Rất là vui được gặp tất cả các em và cô rất là hy vọng rằng là không những là ở đây và tất cả các bạn, nếu như chúng ta có bất cứ câu hỏi gì có thể gửi tới chương trình và chương trình có thể email trực tiếp, bởi vì là du học là một hành trình dài và cô và trường luôn ở đây để giúp tất cả các em tọa nguyện, kể cả mình như bạn Khương Trần ở vùng quê không sao cả, bản thân cô cũng ở một vùng quê xa xôi. Tiếng Anh cô không học từ khi cô bắt đầu ở vùng quê, cô không có khả năng, không có thời gian và cũng không có điều kiện học tiếng Anh đến khi mình học xong đại học ở Việt Nam. Nhưng không sao, khi mà mình có ước mơ, mình có đam mê, các bạn cứ mạnh mẽ lên và mình có cái kế hoạch cụ thể. Cô và trường giúp tất cả các bạn ở vùng quê hay ở nội thành hay ở đâu cũng sẽ được nhận được sự trợ giúp tốt nhất. Được chưa nào? Nếu mà mình có thêm câu hỏi gì thì cứ gửi email của cô và trường sẽ hỗ trợ hết sức nhá. Rất vui được gặp tất cả mọi người và hy vọng là bên team mình sẽ có nhiều cuộc trò chuyện như thế này, bởi vì rất là hữu ích và có thể được gặp các bạn học sinh gần gũi như thế này.
Dạ vâng, cảm ơn cô và thầy Pete rất là nhiều. Và chúng ta, nếu các bạn có bất kỳ câu hỏi gì, đừng ngại ngần, hãy gửi tin nhắn vào inbox của iFoc fanpage, cũng như bạn cũng có thể gửi email thẳng cho trường để tìm hiểu thêm về mình, về ngành Art and Design, cũng như là về cuộc sống sinh viên và cơ hội đi du học ở bên đó. Và để kết thúc buổi học đầu tiên, chúng ta sẽ kết thúc bằng một video giới thiệu về ngôi trường Wales Trinity Saint David. Đây là một trong những trường đại học hàng đầu trong ngành thiết kế và nghệ thuật. Và trước khi chúng ta kết thúc chương trình thì mình xin nhắc lại một lần nữa, đừng quên là chúng mình IFO vẫn đang casting các bạn học sinh để tham gia vào các buổi học tiếp theo dành cho IFO Classroom mùa 4. Các bài tiếp theo của chúng ta có thể về tourism, du lịch, về journalism, về nghề báo, về master in science in marketing, tức là về cả marketing, về cho hệ sau đại học nữa. Chúng ta có rất là nhiều chủ đề thú vị sắp tới, cho nên là các bạn đừng quên, nếu các bạn hứng thú với chương trình thì hãy xem ngay trong phần comment hoặc là inbox chúng mình để đăng ký nha. Cảm ơn thầy Peter rất là nhiều, cảm ơn chị Yến rất là nhiều, cảm ơn 4 bạn học sinh Quang Nguyên, Như Muội, Khương Trần và Lê Quân, cũng như cảm ơn tất cả các bạn khán giả đã cùng xem chương trình của chúng ta ngày hôm nay. Và đừng quên chúng mình sẽ gặp lại nhau vào 8 giờ tối thứ 3 tuần sau trên fanpage của IFO và YouTube. Thank you so much for spending your time with us, and we will see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. on IFO fanpage as well as YouTube. Thank you, Dr. Pete. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and have a good night. Have a good night, and we'll see you.
See you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.